Hello and welcome, friends, to another Crusader Kings 3 Dev Diary. This time we're talking about medieval tapestry. Honestly, this could be for anything, so it's quite a nondescript title, I would say. But I have heard it has quite a lot to do with gender and sexuality in the game, which if it is a role-playing game, so having those options available is, I think, a good thing. So yeah, let's move on. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Today, Vervatuli and I are bringing you a development diary about how we're catering to different player fantasies in CK3. We'll also be showcasing some of the content and gameplay you'll encounter. We're huge believers in allowing players as much freedom as possible to shape the game world in their image, which is reflected in the Paradox slogan, "We make the games, you create the stories." Of course, when trying to model history reasonably accurately as we do in CK3, your starting environment might be a far cry from the just and equal realm you wish to rule, but determined players should be able to change the mores of society over time, if that is their fantasy. As you might suspect, the CK3 team consists of some very nerdy, passionate and compassionate people. Some of the things we're outlining in this dev diary were part of the regular development process, and some have been passion projects. It's been very important for us to represent our players, the team behind the game, and the people who don't feature heavily in most history books and media. We want everyone to feel welcome and to empower you to play your fantasy. So basically, I feel like this is very much a case of, like I said, the people that have been left out of history books and the media, and I think the thing that immediately comes to mind is how to say this in the best way, like the straight washing of history. Like, very rarely do you hear about gay people in medieval or ancient history. When they certainly existed, we just don't hear of it, and when it is hinted at, it's quite often sort of like, oh, but they could have been just two good friends living with each other, doing everything together, and it's never a case of, oh, they may have been gay. So I feel like that's sort of what they're hinting at here. Already we have the homosexual trait in CK2, but maybe they are expanding upon how that works. But let's read on. Let's have a look. CK3 is truly a diverse game. It spans the map of nearly half the world and almost 6 centuries of history. This world is inhabited by a myriad of titles, cultures, faiths, and characters. It's been our goal to represent all of these things with a great level of detail and accuracy, to give you all a deeply immersive experience with more dynamic elements and player choice than ever before. Will you recreate history, build a brand new world, or something in between? It is all in your hands. Good stuff. We haven't just added more diversity, that variety is also much more readily available than it was in CK2. For example, all faiths and cultures on the map are playable on release, and the dynamic faith system will give you much greater power to change the world. We've also added many different game rules, it's great to see them making a return, which allow you to tailor your CK3 experience. If you would rather play as a queen than a king from day one, then the game rules let you do that without having to create a custom faith during your campaign. There are other challenges out there to conquer and stories to explore. I know for me personally, I do quite prefer having historical settings to play from. Like, I generally have the start of the game be historically accurate, and from there I like to expand it and do what I want from there, rather than changing the game rules to allow me to do a historical stuff from the very, very beginning. That's just my own personal preference. I see most Paradox games as an history simulator. Like, so obviously they're not history simulators. They're not just re-going through history. Like, if you want to do that, go and watch a time-lapse video of map border changes over the centuries. Like, that's not what I like to do. I like plausible changes. So an history simulator is how I like to describe it. So for me, game rules I probably won't be using, but I can see myself exploring the different things that you can do. Like, for example, in CK2, I loved exploring Satanism. And while that's not really fitting into the realm of a history simulator, as you can regrow a castrated dude's dong, it was still like it's not in the realms of possibility, so that sort of goes against what I just said. But it was like that was more of a fantasy kind of game that split from reality at the start of the game. But the start of the game was always historically accurate, unless I was playing a fantasy mod like Geheimnis Nacht or something. Anyway, that's just where I'm coming from. We are incredibly proud of all the stuff we've made for you, so without any further ado, let's jump into the juicy details. So, first off, we've got gender options. All gender-related restrictions in CK3 are controlled by the faiths, either directly or indirectly. As we have an awesome dynamic faith system, all such restrictions can be changed during a playthrough. Our design philosophy for faith tenets related to gender has been the exact same options available for men and women. For example, the view on gender tenet has a setting male-dominated, equal, and female-dominated. All the restrictions for women in male-dominated faiths are applied to men instead in female-dominated faiths. It makes exact sense. We've got claims on titles, cannot be granted titles, only be commanders and knights. Only men and vassals can be appointed as chancellors and stuff. Opinion of female rulers go down. Claims of women can only be pressed against other women, children, or incapable rulers. That's the same as in CK2, fair enough. Then we've got equal, it's just equal, fair enough. And then female dominated is the exact opposite of male dominated. I feel like there could be a little bit of variation, like a bit of a slider between these. Like male dominated, but we can allow women to be chancellors, or female dominated, but we can allow male knights, something like that. Like they should be individually. You should be able to choose the different things inside it. I guess that's a bit more UI space needed for that than is really reasonable. Even when men historically held the highest titles and women's rights were limited, women still had a vital impact on the world around them. In many parts of the medieval world, it was not uncommon for women to rule in their husband's absence. They often advised us and took care of estates. We've chosen to represent this with the spouse council position. Your spouse's skills have a direct impact on your realm, and you'll see events about your spouse handling all sorts of duties, from negotiating with factions to raising additional troops. I'm a little confused as to why my wife wants to present a grand gift to me in the courtyard. I soon understand, however, as Queen Gwenllian orders a group of soldiers into line. A complete regiment raised from my own lands, ready to serve you. This is a grand gift. I thought this was going to go the other way, and it was going to be Queen Gwenllian, like, seizing power. That would have been pretty funny. But I think that actually should probably be a thing. Also, the art, I really like it. And this satinness is nowhere near as shiny as it was in the previous screenshots that we've seen. This looks way better than the early ones, so that I feel like they've definitely changed things. They must have done, because, I mean, she's a queen. She's got the highest, or I guess Empress has probably got a bit more, but she's got one of the highest tiers of clothing. In previous screenshots that we've seen, of like high tier clothing satin, it's looked like they're wearing like bin bags, which looked fucking terrible. But this is so much better. You can tell that it's satin still. It's still got that shiny quality, but it's nowhere near as bad. The hands still have got a little bit of sausaginess going on, but you know, it's baby steps. Like in CK2, we have gender equality game rule, but with some improvements and added variation. The equal setting, corresponding to all in CK2, covers more areas and has fewer exceptions than it did in CK2, largely thanks to our dynamic faith system and the design philosophy mentioned above. It also comes with an inverted setting, where the historical gender statuses are turned on their head and women become the dominant gender in most religions. So we have Mahrani, that would be, you know, a female ruler for, I guess, a Muslim faith? Or no, Hindu faith. I'm pretty sure. Got High Chiefess. Fuck it. So yeah, that'll be the Slavic faiths. We've got Queen, so of the Christian faiths, and then we've got Matriarch Amira of the Armirid clan. One thing I will point out though is the crests have no longer got their faith-specific designs. So, for example, Christianity had a shield design. We had the pagans having some sort of like a rounded shield design. The Muslims had a, oh god, I can barely remember, but they were all different basically, and I don't feel like that is the case anymore. Also, yes, I should have just looked here. It's Hindu, Orthodox, Catholic, Muslim. Yeah, that should have been pretty clear from the off. But whatever. Yeah, but these have definitely changed. These have absolutely changed, and not for the better. Like, for example, if I just open up CK2 real quick, this is the Christian crest. If we just open a single player new game, custom game setup, if we have a look at one of the Muslims, they've got this hexagonal one. If we look at the pagans, oh, we're a little bit too late for pagans. Let's go to early Middle Ages. The pagans have the rounded design. The Hindus also have a rounded design. Rounded design on you as well. Orthodox had the shield. Christianity had the shield. Muslims had the hexagonal one, and everyone else had a circle. And that's no longer the case, and I feel like that's a bit of a shame. It's certainly something that I feel is missing. Which is, I don't know. I mean, that definitely added a bit of flavor to it. I'm not sure how much flavor one could say it had, but yeah, I'm missing that. Women are also more visually present in Crusader Kings than ever before. We have some awesome loading screens with diverse bunch of characters. For example, but the biggest impact comes from the new event window. In CK2 we had lovely event illustrations, but the drawback was the lack of variation when it came to characters. In CK3 we use our gorgeous character models to bring the events to life, which will showcase the rich diversity of the class of your playthrough in the event windows. So we've got this one here, Far From Home. Stranger is brought before me. She has been waiting outside the castle gates for a week. My liege, my guard, informs me. The woman bows deeply. My name is Kurgurchin, your highness. I've travelled far and wide and seen many things, but my family and I are weary of the road. If you want us to stay, happy to share my knowledge of the world, blah, blah, blah. She looks cold. And I guess you could probably, the more that you play, you'll be able to recognize the different poses that they make based on their character traits. Maybe this is a pose for someone that's maybe crafty, and that might be something you can recognize just by looking at what they're doing. I feel like these images really should still be GIFs, though, because these models, they move, and it would be probably a lot less jarring. Like, this doesn't look amazing, especially the hands, but maybe in movement it looks a lot better. I feel like they should probably just make them GIFs, you know? Anyway, moving on. Sexuality. Sexuality provides added spice to character behavior and motivations, both in real life and in CK3. It will also affect what is considered sinful or even criminal in a faith in the game. It's great for drama and intrigue, and in CK3 we've given sexualities more granularity. In addition to heterosexuality and homosexuality from CK2, characters can also be bisexual and asexual. Sexuality is no longer defined by a trait, but it has its own system, which makes it easier to handle for us and more visible in the interface for you. It also means that we do not frame heterosexuality as the default in CK3, which was also important for us. Children develop their sexualities around the age of 10, and once set, it will not change. It's worth noting that we don't model sexual and romantic attraction separately in the game, so our character's sexuality sets both their sexual and romantic preferences. I guess I'm just ignorant of what is the I didn't know that this was different, but I'm just gonna chalk that up to ignorance. Look, I'm a straight white male. Like, I don't know everything about how these things work. It's just, you know, just moving on. So we got budding attraction. While playing with other children, I've found that I do not mind if I'm paired with a girl or a boy for our more intimate games. A lot of the other children seem to have a preference, and some even make a big fuss, but I do not understand why. So I guess this character is becoming bisexual. Yes, he is. There he is. He? She? I don't know. I feel like it could be either, but I'm leaning towards she. I don't know why. We do have a differentiate between sexual preference and sexual behavior in-game. A character's sexuality in and of itself can never be criminal, but certain sexual acts can be. For example, if a faith's view on same-sex relations is not set to accepted, two men who have sex will have the sodomite secret, no matter their sexuality. While the AI doesn't pursue romance or sex with someone they're not attracted to, the player can sometimes choose to act against their sexual preference, albeit with a penalty, and it can never lead to a lover relationship. This means that a player's heterosexual male character could get the sodomite secret if they seduce a homosexual or bisexual man. This is going way deeper into sexuality than CK2 did. And I do remember that this was mentioned in the intrigue focus. Like, there was a trait or a perk that you could pick up where you could act against your sexuality to, seduce somebody of your own sex, and if you were heterosexual. So that'd be a way to sort of get in there, even if it's not what your character particularly wants. And I imagine that the penalty would be something to do with stress. That seems like a fairly ubiquitous penalty for acting against your character's desires or your character's traits and motivations and stuff. If you act against that, you gain stress. I imagine this penalty would be stress as well. We have two game rules related to sexuality. View on same-sex relations and sexuality distribution. The former is very similar to the view on gender rule I mentioned above, and it can change all faiths' view on same-sex relations from their historical defaults to accepted. The latter can change how common each sexuality is. Settings are default, which means heterosexuality is the most common sexuality, equal, which means all four sexualities equally common, and one setting each for homosexuality, bisexuality, and asexuality, which makes them the most common sexuality instead of heterosexuality. Again, I'm probably just going to go with default, purely because that's the way I like to play these games. You start off historical, then you fiddle around in-game. That's, like I say, that's me. It's good for other people, though, that they've got these options. I've got no problem with them adding optional things for people who want them. If you don't want to use them, and I feel like I have to make this point because there are going to be people that complain incessantly about this kind of thing. If you don't want to use this kind of thing, don't. That's it. That's all you got to do, right? There will be people complaining about this, though. Almost certainly. And I don't understand why. So, accepted means same-sex relationships are fully accepted. Love transcends physicality into something so profound and wondrous that it cannot be restricted by mere gender. Alright then. Yeah, so like I say, it won't be something I use, but at the same time, it's great that it's there for other people. Faiths. As the dev diaries of the last couple of weeks have shown, we've given faiths a lot of attention. As you might already know, all faiths will be unlocked at the game start. The dynamic faith system has allowed us to add plenty of variation at release. We hope you'll find that each faith has its own flavour and quirks. Even better, we now have more distinctions between different non-Christian faiths, especially in Africa and India. African paganism from CK2 has been replaced with at least 6 new faiths. Rug, Bori, Siguism, Akom, Wakism, and Cushitism, I have no idea, all with their own tenets and flavour. For example, the Bori have a long history of matriarchs and worship the spirits. As they believe in spirit possession and that spirits can either be feminine or masculine, they're accepting of same-sex relationships. The Sigwiks, on the other hand, worship their ancestors and believe that twins are blessed. I love that that's a possibility. Having twins be a special thing, oh, I love that. It's awesome. So we got Adoricism. This is about spirits, and possessed is a virtue. That's cool. Bhakti rulers can decide to pick a personal avatar to venerate, gaining a relation bonus. I love that. That's basically how, when you're talking about faiths in EU4, the more interesting faiths, I feel, are Hindu and Norse, purely because you can, pick a personal deity, and that's always been great to me. We've got ancestor worship for Sigwists, or maybe others can have ancestor worship as well, but this is one that Sigwists have. And then dharmic pacifism. Cannot declare holy wars or raid. That's clearly not something I'll be using then, because raiding is fun and so are holy wars. Calm is a virtue, wrathful is sin, and you get domain limit. Very nice. Very nice. Hinduism has been split into 7 different faiths, in addition to expanding upon and fleshing out the 4 main traditions of Hinduism. So we've got Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktism, and Smartism. This is a very Smartism Dev Diary. Oh god. Sega 3 also sees the addition of less well-known Hindu traditions, such as Krishnaism and Advaitism. Buddhism has 5 faiths, Jainism 3, and many religions across the map have received similar diversification. We've also added dualism religion with 7 different faiths. For example, Manichaeism, Mandeanism, and Sabianism. Honestly, there's a lot of these that I have never fucking heard of. Like, Hinduism, before I read this, like, I knew is it Vishnu, or is Vaishya another one as well? Shakti, Shiva, I guess, was another one. I knew that there were the different parts of Hinduism, but I thought it was just Hinduism, and these were the different deities or sacred things inside it. Like I say, I'm quite ignorant of this kind of thing, but it's interesting. That's alright. So this is the map of India now, which looks very much more diverse than it used to be. Holy shit. And it's interesting that it's not just blocks, right? So we've got Smartist here and over here. Shadavist is split up. Krishnite's got a little bit of Vaishnaist in between it. We've got Vaishnaist in the south and the north. Theravda's down there. Theravda's something I've heard before. Where have I heard Theravda from? I'm not sure, but I'm certain I've heard it. But it's good that it's not all just, over here we have the Smartists, and over here we have the Mahayanas, and down here we've got the Krishnites. And, like, it makes it a lot more stale. I very, very much dig. I digambara that it's so diverse like this. This looks way better. And as you can create your own faiths, you will be able to create the kind of society you want to play in. As I've mentioned, some things can be preset through game rules, but the challenge of changing the world to your liking can be a really satisfying experience. Yes, that's basically me. If I want to change something to make a society that I want to, I want to role play as a society that does this. I love the challenge of getting that society to that place. And most of the time, the way that I like to do that is with reforming pagan faiths, because that's just really fun, and I'm going to probably do that as my first playthrough. For example, we have the game rule Faith Acceptance, which makes religious wars and disagreements a thing of the past. And Randomized Faith, which gives everyone in the world a random faith. Also, I actually hate this one. For those of you who are sensitive to border gore, precisely me, that's why, please proceed with caution, as the following screenshot contains graphic imagery. For the rest, how many faiths can you spot in the screenshot? Oh, fuck that. Solid amounts of fuck all of that. This is never being turned on for me. Not a single time. Oh my god, that is revolting. No. Just no. Look at that. What have they done to my baby? Oh my god. So I guess, well, where I'm from in England is along this river here. I'm from Middlesbrough, so this is the Tees River. This one here is the Tyne, where Newcastle is. But Middlesbrough's around about here, so I guess I'm either Ari or Coptic. I guess I lived on the south side of the Tees, so I would be Coptic in this absolutely disgusting screenshot. Just, oh no. No, let's move on. I can't look at that. That hurts my eyeballs. talking about ethnicities and cultures. We've expanded the amount of portrait asset sets from the 2 in the CK2 base game to a grand total of 7 in CK3. Or at least there'll be a visual distinction between Western Europe, Northern Pagans, Middle East, North Africa, Byzantium, the Steppe, Sub-Saharan Africa, and India. We'll also have an even greater number of ethnicities, so you'll see variations within these 7 groups. Lovely. Thanks to the new portrait system, ethnicities can now blend seamlessly. When 2 characters of different ethnicities have a child, the children will look a bit different to both parents. I love that! Yes! Fantastic! More on this in later Dev Diary. Right, this really quite irritated me, because what you could end up happening is, say you had a baby with somebody of a different ethnicity, maybe you wanted a claim on their land. Forevermore, despite your culture still being, say, English, your babies would all have. They would look different. Not in a bad or racist way or whatever. But I really, really loved the Norse portraits. They were way better than the default European ones. The ones for the Anglo-Saxons or the English, depending on your start date, in CK2 looked fucking terrible. The Norse, though, because they got a portrait pack later on and not in the base game, looked fucking awesome. So I always went with Norse characters. Even when I was playing an Anglo-Saxon, I'd choose the Norse culture. But then, like 2 or 3 generations in, my babies wouldn't look Norse anymore, and that would make me sad because they look fucking ugly. So having it be a blend, and also the fact that the portraits just look better in general, is great. Alright, the end. That's all for this week, friends. Unfortunately, Verbatuli will not be around to answer your questions this time. She set out on a new adventure after 4 years at Paradox. Oh, well, good luck in your new adventures, Verbatuli. But the rest of the team will be around, of course, so ask away. Take care of yourselves and each other. Yes, of course. Sentiments that I echo. Right, so let's have a checkout of the comments. Agrees 122 to only 14 disagrees. I mean, I think we all kind of expected there to be some disagrees. It's just the times we live in. But yeah, it's good to see that it's so heavily weighted in the other way. Will homosexual characters be able to take an opposite gender consort to produce an heir with full equality for sexuality? Will that be restricted to bisexual characters? What about asexual characters? People will still get married to the opposite sex even if they're not attracted to them, yes. Lack of attraction mainly affects things like seduction, romance, becoming a lover and such. Being your spouse's lover boosts fertility, so that's something a homosexual character would not be likely to obtain. So it means that homosexual characters are still going to be able to have kids. It's not going to be the game over that it often was. Same question. Concubines and consorts will always be of the opposing gender. It's more a relationship of convenience than an actual loving relationship. Sexuality will not affect the way your culture and religion expects you to live your life, so in a default Catholic realms, a man will expected to marry a woman no matter sexuality. Alright. I hope India will not be as contorted and shrunken on the map as it is in CK2. Our protection in CK3 is significantly less distortion in India than the CK2 one had. Good. Would it be possible in-game to split out bits of the male-female dominated sections? That's basically what I asked. The granularity of the view on gender doctrine will be limited on release, but things such as who is allowed to be a knight is decided in script, so it'll be easy to mod. Currently, we do not support changing gender identification. Is that something there? Basically, in partial equality. Yeah, it's basically what I asked. There we go. Clarify, you mentioned how characters determine their sexuality and gender. This has have a bearing on what they're allowed to do. So, for example, in Edge case, if a woman wanted to identify as a man, okay, so this is just, yeah, identity stuff. Okay. What's the next Dev Diary going to be about? We're going to be on Holy Orders. It's interesting they're actually going to tell us. So, yay, Holy Orders. I love Holy Orders. They're great. I'm not religious at all, but I love playing religiously in these games. So, Holy Orders, love them. Now that heterosexuality is no longer a default state, does it mean that you don't know the sexuality of most characters, or does it mean their character sexuality is always a mystery to you? As you said, specific actions aren't necessarily indicative of a character. All characters' sexuality is present in their character view. Fucking hate that. Honestly, really, 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 really hate that. If I'm playing in the default view where, let's be fair, homosexual characters in a default Catholic country were shunned, these people would not be incredibly open about their sexuality. So I shouldn't know it. It should be something that I can get a hook on. But me just knowing? No, you give me too much fucking information. I don't like that. I hate that. No, I don't want... That's one of the problems that I see with Paradox games recently. They're giving far more information than is reasonable. And I don't want to know things that my character shouldn't reasonably know. And it doesn't matter what that is, whether it's another character's sexuality or whether it's the amount of fucking ducats the dude across the river has, right? I shouldn't know that. Unless I've got a spy over there taking notes and sending letters back to me, informing me of these things, I shouldn't know it. I shouldn't be able to, as a count in England, go over to India, right-click on a nation, find who the leader is, and say, oh, look, this character's gay, and he's got this many men, and he's got this much gold, and his wife is this, and her stats are this. I shouldn't know that shit. I just shouldn't know it. And I really hate that we do. I really do. Sexuality itself will not affect how the character is treated. I honestly kind of should, as shitty as that is from a modern perspective. It's kind of how history was. Or the opinion of the people towards them, again, probably should. Again, it's really shitty that this was the case, and honestly, that it still is the case, but homophobe should probably be a trait. Because fucking was. And to have literally everyone not bat an eye is, from a historical perspective, it's just bizarre. Like, we now don't give a shit. But these kind of changes in societal attitude did not come 1,000 years ago. They came, honestly, really, really recently, to the point where a lot of people still not on board. So, like, ugh, no. It might affect how they act, their opinion towards others. It's not enough. Most secrets a character have will be handled through the secret system, only shown as a trait once that secret has been exposed. But this should be one of those secrets. This should be one of those secrets. For Bhakti, what avatars can you select? We have 14 different ones in the game. Kali, Parvati, Ganesha and Shiva. Currently do not have it for other faiths, but it's all handed in script. Cough, mod, cough. Again, just mod it. If you want something, just mod it. The blessing and the curse of Paradox games. Isn't action like pretend to be or act like another sex pretty common occurrence in history, even more in legend and story? Currently we have no events or actions that can influence your gender identity. We discussed it and it would be so cool, but it's not in the scope of what we can do before release. Yeah, things like women pretending to be men because they would be treated better as men. I've definitely heard stories of that. But unfortunately that's not in the game. I'm not sure that has some awkward implications. Realizing a difference in your gender identity isn't as easy as clicking a button on an actions panel, no matter how divorced that may be from what actually happens to a character in the universe. The idea of an event firing saying you suddenly feel like you might not be as you were raised is downright ridiculous. Maybe you include it as a hidden from the world modifier coded into characters. You know, I am going to check this out in a... see what this was a reply to. I think it's important. Alright, so here it is. He's talking about the one that has about gender identity. Realizing your difference in gender identity isn't as easy as clicking a button. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. Also, I think the original comment was more about women disguising as men to do things like join the army. Yeah, like I said that as well. And for those disagreeing, I know what I'm talking... Okay. Well, I mean, only one person disagreed, so that's... So, my bad. I meant gender identity or gender representation. In this specific case, it's only about presentation and being able to subvert restrictions placed upon women and men in a game in that way. It is indeed a very hard subject to breach in form of game mechanics, no doubt. And since it's not a subject we want to make light of or misrepresent in the game, we decided not to try and squeeze it in just because. This looks like a big advantage for intrigue-focused character. A lot of things do. You know, which characters are more likely to have secrets, or am I missing something? Yeah, like, that's very true. Because if you know who... If being a sodomite or whatever is a hook that you can get, or if... well, yeah, that is a hook, and you know who every single gay character in the game is, you, as an intrigue-focused person, can be looking for those hooks. The same could be said for lustful characters being more likely to have lovers. Again, something I shouldn't know. I shouldn't know this stuff. Yeah, the same could be said. And the same fucking argument applies. I shouldn't know this stuff. All depend on what behaviour would amount to a secret for your culture and religion, and all bisexual, homosexual characters will, of course, not have secrets related to their sexuality. But they're more likely to. They're more likely to have secrets related to homosexual acts than heterosexual characters. So I shouldn't know. This is something I will always argue for. There's too much information. Too much. Far too much. My reading of this is that on a per-character basis, sexuality is not modelled as heterosexual unless marked otherwise, but that if you use the default rule, a large majority of characters will be set to be heterosexual. Yes. We want to avoid the common trend of heterosexuality be assumed to be default rather than simply being the most common. So except for being the most common, heterosexual attraction is treated identically to the other sexualities in the game. I mean, I see where they're coming from. They want to have it visible on every character because otherwise it is assumed to be the default. And while that does have problems associated with it, at the same time, I mean, it kind of is the default. When it is the most common to the tune of, what, like 90% or more? That can kind of be said to be the default. And especially when you're talking about cultures where, and I'm talking about in history now, cultures where homosexuality was criminal, yeah, being heterosexual was the default. Because to be otherwise was to be a criminal. I mean, there's problems either way, but I just think, you know, I still think there's just too much information. I'd rather have it be that I don't know and that I have to find out than I know everyone's sexuality purely because they don't want to have it be that we've got a default sexuality. And maybe that's just my bias as somebody who is straight. I don't know. But yeah, I think I'm going to stick with my opinion. I think there's just too much information, and this is something that we should not know. It shouldn't say straight or bi or gay or asexual. It should just not have that information listed on the character screen. And then you can make whatever assumptions that you want based on what you know about the character and their actions that you've seen. I think that would be the best way. Like I say, it is a fucking eggshell topic to try and create mechanics for. And I'm not saying that they're wrong to do it this way, it's just not the way that I prefer. And I guess I'm just going to stick with that. But I would like to know what you guys think. So, do you agree with me that Paradox Games now shows a bit too much information? Or do you think this is a great step in the right direction? I'd love to know your thoughts, so please do leave them in the comment section below. As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this Dev Diary video. I hope you found it informative, and I will see you in the next one, which will be about holy orders. Certainly a less touchy subject, I think. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.